Most of us were taught the same thing growing up. Be kind, be polite, and everything will work out. But what if that advice, though well-intentioned, is quietly setting you up to lose? What if your niceness, your patience, your insistence on doing the right thing is the very reason you keep getting overlooked, underestimated, or used? This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about waking up. Machiavelli and the Prince didn't glorify evil. He revealed something brutally honest. The good often fail not because they're wrong, but because they refuse to do what is necessary. They hold themselves to moral standards that their enemies never intended to follow, and in that imbalance, the good fall. This video isn't for those who want to stay comfortable. It's for those who want to win with clarity. If you're tired of being taken for granted and ready to stop playing by rules others ignore, then watch closely. Subscribe for more raw truth grounded in philosophy, because today, clarity is power.
Number 1.
The failure of the nice approach. Nice guys often find themselves trapped in a cruel contradiction. They live with integrity, speak gently, treat others fairly, and yet they are ignored, passed over, silenced. Not because they're wrong, but because they're too easy to overlook, too easy to use. They confuse being liked with being respected and pay the price in silence. At the core of this failure is a dangerous belief that morality is persuasive on its own, that kindness naturally inspires kindness, that logic and decency, when consistently practiced, will win hearts, minds, and influence. But what both Niccolò Machiavelli and the Stoic philosophers knew is this: the world does not bend to your virtue, it bends to power, to perception, to clarity of action. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who wrote Meditations, was a model of goodness and restraint, but he also faced plots, betrayals, and manipulation from those who mistook his calm nature as a weakness to exploit. He endured those trials not because he was naive, but because he knew something most nice men never learn. Goodness without strength is not respected. In his own words, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, but also be one that cannot be moved, used, or quietly disrespected. The Stoics did not equate kindness with effectiveness. They pursued virtue not for reward, but because it aligned with nature and reason. But they also understood that living well required strength, self-awareness, and discipline. As Epictetus warned, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. Many nice men suffer not from external cruelty, but from their own distorted belief that being good should protect them. It doesn't, in fact, it sometimes makes them targets. Machiavelli saw this clearly. In The Prince, he noted how rulers who governed with only goodness and moral idealism often lost their thrones to more cunning, strategic adversaries. He wasn't saying goodness was foolish, but that it was incomplete. A man who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him among so much that is evil. The lesson: if you do not understand the rules of power, you will become a pawn, no matter how pure your intentions. Let's look at a real-world example. Fred Rogers, or Mr. Rogers. He is remembered as a soft-spoken symbol of kindness, but what people often forget is his unbreakable clarity. Rogers had fierce boundaries. He said no often. He didn't try to appease everyone. His message was rooted in conviction, not comfort. His tone was gentle, but his mission was immovable, and that is what made his kindness powerful. It was chosen, not performed. This is the fatal flaw of most nice guys. They assume that kindness is a strategy, when in fact it is a trait, and traits, when not grounded in clarity, become liabilities. They believe they are being moral, but often they are simply avoiding discomfort. They fear confrontation, they shy away from boundaries, they call it being understanding, but it's really just self-erasure. Seneca, the great Stoic advisor, warned against this soft kind of goodness. A good character, when established, is not easily overthrown. But how many nice people have a good character that's consistent? How many bend at the first sign of disapproval? If your kindness disappears the moment someone challenges it, then it was never strength. It was strategy, and a weak one at that. And what happens when nice men continue on this path? They burn out, they grow resentful, they say things like, "I've always done the right thing. Why am I still disrespected?" But here's the hard truth. You can't ask to be respected if you've never made yourself non-negotiable. Respect is not given for effort. It's given for presence, for clarity, for consequence. A Stoic never asks the world to be fair. He accepts it as it is, and then decides how to act within it. Epictetus wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If you want to be both kind and powerful, you must be willing to train your voice, your posture, your tone. You must be willing to endure being misunderstood, disliked, or even feared for the sake of something higher than approval. Because here's the paradox. True kindness often requires confrontation, saying no, holding the line, disappointing someone who wants more than they deserve. The Stoic is not cold, but he is honest, and honesty is never as comfortable as flattery. Kindness without discipline becomes a currency others devalue. It's like giving away gold coins in a marketplace where everyone is trading in sand. Eventually, no one takes you seriously, not because you're bad, but because you gave your worth away for free. So what's the way forward? It's not to become cruel, it's to become clear, to let your words mean something, to walk into rooms with a spine, to stop apologizing for having standards, and to stop explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. Because niceness in the modern world is often just emotional compliance. It's often just fear of rejection wearing a pleasant mask. But respect doesn't come from being agreeable. It comes from being grounded. To be truly good, to be the kind of person Stoicism calls virtuous, is not to be soft. It's to be unshakable in your goodness. To act with justice even when it's hard. To speak with truth even when it's unpopular. And to know when silence is more powerful than compromise. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to walk your path with integrity and strength. The man who can hold both, who can be kind and commanding, generous and grounded, is the one people remember, and the one who never has to raise his voice to be heard. So if you've been playing the nice guy role and wondering why it keeps backfiring, step back, not from your goodness, but from your attachment to being seen as good. Because in the end, clarity commands more than kindness ever could. And being nice will only take you so far. But being strong, that will carry you to the finish.
Number 2.
The Machiavellian solution in The Prince. When most people hear the name Machiavelli, they picture a villain, a manipulator whispering in the ear of tyrants, plotting in the shadows. But that image is a distortion. In truth, The Prince was not a handbook for cruelty. It was a lifeline for the moral man trapped in an immoral world. Machiavelli did not invent corruption. He exposed it. And more importantly, he offered a way for well-intentioned leaders to survive it. At its core, The Prince is not about becoming evil. It is about not being eaten by it. It is about facing the hard reality that good intentions alone are not enough. That if you want to bring about good in a chaotic world, you cannot be naive about power. You must learn to use the tools of the game, not with malice, but with mastery. This is precisely where Machiavelli and the Stoics intersect. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You must understand the nature of each thing and adapt yourself accordingly." He didn't say, "Hope the world changes." He said, "Understand it." Likewise, Machiavelli believed that morality without strategy was a liability. His most famous line, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both," was not a celebration of fear. It was a recognition that love is fragile in politics, but fear is remembered. Now let's be very clear. Machiavelli never told people to be evil for its own sake. What he said was this: if cruelty is necessary, let it be swift, decisive, and rare. Do not play the fool who gets manipulated because he feared looking harsh. Do not become a martyr of purity. His advice to princes was, if you must act with force, do it clearly, without hesitation, and do not repeat it. That's not brutality. It's precision. And it's the same wisdom that echoes through Stoic practice. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Embodiment, in the Stoic sense, means knowing when to act and when to restrain. It means not needing approval to validate your path, but in the real world, where deceit walks hand in hand with ambition, that embodiment must sometimes include strength that others mistake for coldness. Look at Abraham Lincoln. He is often remembered as a symbol of integrity, and rightly so, but beneath that moral clarity was a razor-sharp strategist. He dismissed those who failed him. He made decisions that offended the masses. He broke traditions and even ignored legal precedent when the nation was at stake. Not because he lacked principle, but because he understood that principle alone does not hold a nation together. Sometimes principle needs armor. This is the Machiavellian solution. Do not abandon goodness, fortify it, do not throw away virtue. Just stop wearing it as a disguise. Because people can sense when your kindness is a shield for fear. And when they do, they will test it. They will push. They will take. The Stoics knew this too, Seneca warned. A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. That includes the suffering of moral rigidity. If you are unwilling to adapt, unwilling to bend without breaking, then you will fracture in the face of complexity. Both Stoicism and the Prince teach that clarity is the antidote to suffering. Not soft clarity, sharp clarity. So how does one live this wisdom? It begins by shifting your aim from being liked to being respected. Nice guys seek harmony, wise men seek alignment. The difference is that alignment can include tension, disagreement, even temporary disapproval, because it's anchored in truth, not comfort. A Stoic doesn't flinch at hard conversations. He doesn't chase applause. He builds internal order and lets the external world adjust or leave. Machiavelli would say, do not waste time trying to clean up a world that does not want to be cleaned. Instead, position yourself in such a way that your goodness cannot be ignored or destroyed. That's not submission. That's strategy. Consider another modern example. Steve Jobs. He wasn't known for being pleasant, but he was undeniably effective. His commitment to vision, his refusal to water things down, and his strategic use of pressure all made him feared and admired. He understood what most leaders forget. To change the world, you must be willing to confront it. Not with anger, but with unwavering clarity. Stoicism is not about passive endurance, and Machiavelli is not about ruthless ambition. They are both about seeing things as they are, not as we wish they were. That includes people, that includes ourselves. And here lies the real tragedy of the nice guy who avoids Machiavelli. He thinks that by rejecting the darkness, he remains untouched by it. But the truth is, you cannot defeat what you refuse to study. And if you refuse to understand manipulation, you will always fall victim to it. If you refuse to learn strategy, you will forever be outmaneuvered. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that a man who becomes a new ruler must determine all the injuries he needs to inflict. He wasn't encouraging harm, he was encouraging foresight. Do what is necessary once. Do it wisely, then move on. Let your actions speak louder than your image. Likewise, the Stoic lets go of his need to be seen a certain way. He does not curate his life to be admired. He curates his character to be unshakable. And from that posture, he acts, not to dominate, but to remain untouchable by chaos. So if you've ever felt that your kindness is being used against you, read The Prince not as a manual for malice, but as a mirror. Let it show you what kind of world you're actually in, and then return to the Stoics, return to discipline, restraint, and virtue. But this time, bring strategy with you, because the most dangerous man is not the loudest, not the cruelest, but the one who is good and prepared.
Number 3.
Deconstructing the foundation of niceness. Niceness is often praised as a virtue, but in truth, it's more often a disguise, a behavior adopted not out of strength, but out of fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of not being seen as good. And when a man builds his entire identity around being nice, he begins to erode the very thing that makes him strong, his clarity. To be clear, there is nothing wrong with kindness. The Stoics themselves practice gentleness, humility, and compassion, but they never confused those traits with passivity. They never allowed virtue to become a performance. That's the difference. Modern niceness is not rooted in grounded values. It is rooted in people-pleasing, in fragility, in the desperate hope that if we never offend, we will never be hurt. Machiavelli called this out centuries ago. He looked at the cultural ideal of the gentle man, the one who turns the other cheek, who absorbs injustice, who sacrifices himself for the good of others. And he saw something dangerous. Not because the values were wrong, but because they left a man defenseless. If all men were good, he wrote, this precept would not be good. But all men are not good, and therefore a man who is only good, without the ability to defend that goodness, is at the mercy of those who are Mars. Consider the historical example of Jesus. Whether you see him as a spiritual figure or a moral teacher, his life, especially in its final acts, embodied pure virtue, forgiveness, humility, non-resistance, and yet he was mocked, humiliated, betrayed, and killed. Machiavelli did not criticize his message. He questioned the effectiveness of his method in the context of real power. Because the world does not protect virtue simply because it is virtuous, it often devours it. Now shift this lens to Stoicism. The Stoics believed in justice, in mercy, in acting with reason and integrity. But they also believed in boundaries. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And that includes being the master of your emotions, your energy, your presence. Niceness, as practiced today, is often the opposite. It's a surrender of self, saying yes when you want to say no, smiling when you feel disrespected, staying silent when your voice is needed most. So ask yourself, is your kindness a choice, or is it a coping mechanism? Do you act kindly because it aligns with your values, or because you're afraid of being disliked? This is the uncomfortable question that most people avoid. They tell themselves they're being understanding, compassionate, mature, but what they're really doing is shrinking, over-apologizing, over-accommodating, trading honesty for harmony, and then wondering why no one respects them. Seneca, who walked the halls of Roman power, understood this dynamic intimately. He wrote, "A good character, once established, is not easily overthrown." But most niceness today isn't character. It's costume. It falls apart the moment it's challenged. That's not virtue, that's vulnerability in disguise. And when people sense that your kindness comes from fear, not choice, they stop respecting it. They start testing it, seeing how far they can push, how much they can take. And before long, the nice guy finds himself exhausted, resentful, and confused. Why does no one treat me the way I treat them? Because, the world answers back, you taught them that your boundaries were negotiable. Now let's consider someone who embodied true strategic kindness. Eleanor Roosevelt. She was graceful, composed, and deeply moral. But she wasn't passive. She spoke out against injustice. She confronted critics with firmness. Her voice was steady, even when the world was loud. And people respected her, not just because she was kind, but because she was strong. Her kindness had weight. It had edges. That's what Stoicism demands. Virtue with spine, niceness with teeth. Not cruelty, not aggression, but composure backed by unwavering boundaries. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is often mistaken for passivity, but it's not. It's a call to live with purpose, not with reaction. It doesn't mean silence. It means acting with intention rather than impulse. That includes standing up for yourself. That includes saying no when it matters. That includes letting people walk away when they demand more than you can give. Niceness is often a way to avoid responsibility. People say, "I didn't want to hurt their feelings," but what they really mean is, "I didn't want to feel guilty." Stoicism doesn't give you that out. It demands self-honesty. If you must hurt someone's feelings to stay aligned with your principles, then so be it. As long as you act justly and with clarity, the discomfort is secondary. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is to become clear, to live in such a way that your kindness is never mistaken for weakness, to speak in such a way that your silence carries meaning, to act in such a way that people know, this is a man who cannot be manipulated, cannot be guilted, cannot be moved from what he knows is right. So dismantle the idea that being nice is always noble. Sometimes it's cowardice in disguise. Sometimes it's a trap you set for yourself, one that keeps you small, agreeable, and invisible. Better to be kind and misunderstood than agreeable and invisible. Better to be truthful and firm than soft and exhausted. Because the world doesn't reward your good intentions, it responds to your energy, your boundaries, your presence. And if your kindness is not backed by strength, it will be ignored. But if your kindness comes from power, quiet, rooted, disciplined power, then it will be remembered.
Number 4.
The central principle, effectiveness over intentions. There is a sobering truth that Machiavelli and the Stoics, despite their vastly different tones, both agreed on. You are not measured by your intentions, you are measured by your outcomes. You may have meant well, you may have been sincere, compassionate, even selfless. But if your actions did not lead to clarity, strength, or meaningful change, the world does not remember your heart. It remembers your results. This may sound harsh, but it is not cruelty, it is clarity. Seneca warned, "A good character, once formed, must be acted upon." Yet too many people today stop at the formation. They read, they plan, they hope, but they never execute. They stay stuck in the theater of good intentions, where being well-meaning is enough to feel virtuous, but never enough to be effective. And that's where Stoicism parts ways with comfort. Because Stoicism is not about how you feel, it's about how you move, and it demands something modern. Niceness does not accountability for your impact. Consider the average nice guy. He wants to do the right thing. He avoids conflict. He tries to please everyone. But despite his best efforts, he's often overlooked, disrespected, misunderstood. Why? Because he confused moral intent with functional competence. He believed that if his heart was clean, his hands would be enough. But this is where Machiavelli drops the hammer. In The Prince, he writes that the ends justify the means, a phrase often misunderstood. He wasn't celebrating evil, he was pointing out a truth every leader eventually learns. If you don't achieve your goal, your purity is irrelevant. The road to failure is paved with good intentions that never became results. The Stoics would not disagree, Epictetus taught. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That means action. That means discipline. That means making decisions that may look cold but serve something higher. Truth, justice, stability, purpose. Let's examine a real example. Steve Jobs. He was no saint in personality. He was sharp, obsessive, and often difficult. But he built something enduring. Why? Because he did not chase being liked. He chased being effective. His kindness, when it appeared, was real, but it was never confused with his mission. His goal was not to be seen as good. His goal was to create something great, and he did. Now contrast that with 1,000 well-meaning managers, artists, or leaders who had vision, but no strategy, who wanted change, but never challenged the system, who wanted respect, but never risked being disliked. They remained safe, and they remained invisible. Effectiveness requires discomfort. It demands the willingness to disappoint others in order to remain true. Marcus Aurelius knew this well. As emperor, he was beloved not just for his character, but for his competence. He did not govern with emotion, he governed with reason. A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions, he wrote. And ambition, when not backed by discipline, becomes delusion. That is the crisis of the modern, well-intentioned man. He believes that wanting good is the same as doing good. He confuses effort with excellence, and he uses his virtue as a shield, hoping that if people just understand how much he means well, they will overlook his lack of direction, resolve, or leadership. But the world is not structured that way. Your relationships, your career, your legacy, they all bend to one law. What did you actually do? Were you brave enough to set a boundary? Were you clear enough to be misunderstood, yet remain true? Were you disciplined enough to follow through when it was no longer exciting? Were you powerful enough to act when others froze? That is the Stoic test. Not how you feel, but what you do with how you feel, not what you say you value, but whether your calendar, your behavior, your results reflect those values. Machiavelli saw this weakness in good people and tried to correct it. He didn't want them to become monsters. He wanted them to stop losing. He wanted them to realize that virtue is not a performance. It is a tool, and if you don't know how to wield it strategically, you will hand it to someone who does, and they will use it against you. Look at someone like Oprah Winfrey. She is widely known for her compassion, her generosity, her humanity. But beneath that is steel. She made tough calls. She walked away from toxic deals. She built systems, negotiated contracts, fought legal battles, all without compromising her values. That's what effectiveness looks like. Not loud, but unshakable. Not aggressive, but clear. And that's the lesson for anyone who still believes that being nice is enough. It's not. Goodness is not a strategy. It is a standard. Your strategy must be based on results. Ask yourself honestly, am I showing up as the person I claim to be? Or am I hiding behind sentiment? Do people respect my decisions, or do they pity my sacrifices? Am I using my time, my energy, my talent with intention? Or am I waiting for permission to lead? Because no one will remember what you hope to do. They will remember what changed when you entered the room. They will remember what stood because you supported it, what grew because you planted it, what survived because you didn't flinch when others did. Effectiveness is not about perfection, it's about alignment. And the Stoic lives aligned with what is necessary, with what is just, and with what is real. So don't just mean well, don't just try hard. Become effective. Because in the end, legacy is not built on what you intended. It's built on what you delivered. Most people spend their lives trying to be good, hoping that if they're kind enough, patient enough, respectful enough, the world will treat them fairly. But as both Machiavelli and the Stoics made clear, the world does not reward your intentions. It rewards your clarity, your boundaries, your ability to act. If you want to create change, protect peace, or build something lasting, you must stop relying on being liked and start becoming effective. Not ruthless, but strategic. Not heartless, but disciplined. Kindness means nothing if it cannot hold its ground. And virtue means little if it's never put into motion. So ask yourself, am I living to be seen as good? Or am I living to become strong enough to do good? Because in the end, the world doesn't need more nice guys. It needs more good men who are ready to act, quietly, boldly, without apology. Subscribe for more truth like this, sharp, grounded, and unapologetically honest.